I'm Dallas Cothrum, and welcome to If You'll Permit Me. Today our guest is former Dallas City Council member Lee Kleinman. He just finished his 8-year sentence as a Dallas City Council member and doubled down and also served on the park board for how many years?
5 years.
5 years. So he's out for good behavior now and here to talk to us about all things about the city of Dallas. So Lee, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
And talk about, maybe your park board career and all the work you did on bike trails, because I appreciated that during COVID.
Well, I'm glad you did. That was kind of how I got started with the city. Just a little background on myself. Born and raised here in Dallas, from a Dallas family.
Hillcrest guy.
No, went to St. Mark's.
St. Mark's guy.
But I was in Hillcrest neighborhood.
That's right. Okay.
My family's from here, from South Dallas, and which is always an interesting conversation. Sidebar, talk with the District 7 reps about, my dad used to live like right there, and you could walk to Fair Park. But I just came from a family that was very used to kind of serving the community in a lot of different ways, and when an opportunity arose to be on the park board that Linda Coop offered me, who was my predecessor on the council.
And good councilor.
She was great. She's still great. She was a great legislator when she was that too. I jumped on that and got on the park board and really enjoyed that kind of work. And I came back to look back on it once I was a council member, and I realized that the park board was one of the few places in the city where the city actually proactively tries to improve the quality of life of the city. Everything else is a response or a reaction.
Sometimes has money to do it.
And we need to keep that going.
Yeah,
too.
I agree.
Every other thing in the city is a reaction. So if you have crime, you have a police department. If you have fires, you have a fire department. If you have potholes, you have a street department. If you have trash, you have a sanitation department. But parks, libraries, and cultural affairs are the three areas where they actually proactively try to enhance the quality of life of the city, and I've come to call that the Ministry of Happiness. And I'm trying to get people to start calling it that, because that's what they do. So I love that on parks. We were, putting in trails, building new playgrounds, cutting ribbons, doing all kinds of great stuff, and I just thought, man, work for the city is awesome. So that became a bit of a passion of mine. Was trail building, and under the wonderful guidance of Willis Winters, who used to be the director of the Parks Department, and prior to that was the director of capital projects for the Parks Department.
When Paul was
when Paul Dyer
was also a good director.
Willis was just all about trail. I mean, he's all about developing the whole department. But one of the things he came to recognize and pushed was that of all the different facilities the Parks Department can put in, trails serve the most amount of people for the least amount of money. We roll down a ribbon of pavement and we mow, and that's about all we have to do. I mean, pick up some trash, as opposed to a rec center where you have to have all these services, activities, staff, maintenance,
electricity.
Just all. I mean, we can just roll them out, and so he was very big on that. And so they had done a master plan for the city. Which at the time I think was about 125 miles of bike trail. There were probably 50 or 70 at the time, and that just became my passion and many of my colleagues. And one of the things I did that I'm very, very proud of is Lois Finkelman, who was actually the council member before Linda Coop, was before me, had envisioned this idea of having a bike trail in the Encore easement that ran parallel to North Haven Road. And she, I think, had gone to
we worked on that with Lois. And,
good.
And Earl Nye back in the day.
Getting that permission.
And that was really out of the box thinking, and now it's widespread. Encore really proactively coordinates with municipalities, and it's a great way to use land that would otherwise not be used.
Exactly, and the beauty there is that really what you have there is a linear park, and when you start thinking of it in those terms, instead of thinking in terms of why are we going to put a bike trail in an Encore easement, if you think of terms of here's an opportunity for a linear park, in that particular case, almost 10 miles of parkland right through the middle of North Dallas.
Connects to the North Haven YMCA there.
Right.
Great school.
Good Shepherd.
Good Shepherd, yeah.
D-Lee is on the route. Several schools are along there, a lot of shopping centers. And that, so when I was, Lois had envisioned it, Linda was pretty interested. I got on the park board and said, what's going on with this? Well, it's not funded. And funding, of course, for capital projects in the city of Dallas comes through capital campaigns or through the bond program is really what it is. So I was passionate about it. I wanted to get it started. I worked with Linda. She had sidewalk money for Royal Lane to put sidewalks on Royal Lane between Central Expressway and Hillcrest. And she had a couple neighborhood meetings. The neighbors weren't too hip on it. I don't think it was explained to them very well. But I jumped on that opportunity. I said, Linda, I mean, you have this bond money. The neighbors aren't so hot on it. Why don't we get the first piece of North Haven Trail started? And she liked that idea. She wrote a reprogramming letter. She did the legwork that was required at that time to figure out how to move the money from one to the other. And I proactively went out and started the Friends of the North Haven Trail. I remember our first meeting. We had it at Cindy's Deli right there on Central. People were enthusiastic about it. So we just got on it. And that trail's been a passion of mine for 12 or 13 years. And I probably delivered, between me and, not just me, but me and lots of other folks, we've probably delivered, for that trail alone, probably $40 to $50 million to put that in. And
how much did, during COVID, has the use of the trails gone up?
It anecdotally went up tremendously, and it was very well recognized by the park staff and the Parks Department and the council members. Some of these trails, in particular, a trail called the Sopac Trail, which runs from White Rock Lake to Royal Lane. It's a straight shot trail. It's kind of a hidden trail, and I've ridden it quite a bit, and it was usually very, very quiet. When COVID hit, it was swarming like ants all over. It was fantastic, and the entire trail system saw a huge lift in the amount of users. And the nice thing is it's held on.
Yeah.
People realized they really liked that. That was nice.
Yes.
And I went with Jeff Kittner, who's my park board member. I went with him and John Jenkins, who is the director of the Parks Department. We took John. John is a runner. He wasn't much of a bike rider. We said, John, you got to ride these trails. You got to understand and ride them. So he and I have been taking John on these bike rides. And John, who's been a park guy his whole career, it's just like it was an epiphany for him.
Because you can really see the whole city, and you can, it's not just confined to White Rock, and you can ride all the way to Richardson and UTD.
And all the way south to southern Dallas.
Right.
And for John, in his mind, not wrong, he just didn't quite understand it. He thought it was guys wearing tight shorts and kits and clipped in and riding fast, and it was just, and he literally.
And there is some of that.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And the first time he said, I was really worried you guys were going to wear me out. And we took him on those upright bikes and just nice casual ride. We stopped all the time, talked. He's like, I didn't realize how nice it is just to be out riding around. I'm like, yeah, it's not all about just hardcore riders. And so now he's all about it. And he was before, but now he's
because he's seen it working.
Right.
Yeah, well, I agree. This is something the city of Dallas is doing right.
Thank you. If I had anything to do with that, I appreciate it.
And I love your Ministry of Happiness. We'll try and use that for sure. So, you certainly benefited from having two incredibly good leaders come before you, directly before you. Lois and Linda were always great to work with, and mostly good voters on zoning cases. And you've got a lot of good residents in that area, and it's a part of the city. People are actively involved, and often in a really proactive manner, where they're not simply, I'm opposed to everything.
Right.
We wouldn't have gotten Preston Hollow Village done, and really, that's all three of you guys worked on that.
Right.
So
and I just got to take credit for it.
Well, that's good, and you same thing with Valley View. So maybe that's a good place to talk.
Valley View, I would take credit for that.
What are some of the things, I guess, in your 8 years on the council you're the proudest of?
I would say the trail system and the North Haven Trail, and really trying to support that system. That's a real passion for me, and it really comes full circle. They put me back on the board of North Haven Trail, and that I'm very proud of that.
Well, I always appreciated that you really are a fiscal hawk, and I think that I worry for my kids and their kids that the city of Dallas, their bond rating is not what it once was, and the great George Schrader, who I considered a friend, and when Dallas was really well managed and clean. That was always really important. So, speak to that, because I have some real concerns about, are there unfunded mandates and checks that are not going to be cashable.
Well, there's a lot to talk about on that subject.
I know.
But I got to tell you, the last bond program, I don't know if you remember, I wrote an op-ed in the Dallas Morning News where I actually
read.
But I'm glad you did. Well,
yeah, I do.
Where I actually wrote for the bond propositions, which was almost unheard of. Bond propositions always pass in Dallas, and good, bad, or ugly. But when I wrote that article, I took a mulligan on the park money. I just said, look, maybe we need it, maybe we don't, but it just enhances quality of life. So that is always where my heart has been. But the city rakes in a ton of money. The budget is almost $4 billion. That's like a number that's, people can't even get their head around.
No.
Half the council members working for $60,000 on the council is a good job. It's a well-paying job. So now you're asking someone to look at hundreds of millions of dollars, and conceptually, especially with business experience, people don't even quite understand what that money means.
Right.
And that's really challenging because the budget globally is a huge bucket, but then it's made up of lots of little individual line items. And every time you try to pick apart any one line item, there's always some advocate for it. They always got to have it. Can't live without it. Da, da, da. And so it's very hard to show any budget restraint. The other thing is you have two factors that give council members, I don't know what the right word is, give council members comfort spending more money. One is that because property values are generally going up in Dallas, the city collects additional tax revenue just by virtue of the fact that property values are going up. New construction comes online that wasn't there before. Again,
A lot of it.
More property tax money that the city's collecting without hitting anybody. And the last thing, and possibly most importantly, is about 85% of the property tax revenue in the city of Dallas comes north of 30. Okay, so it's downtown and north. And about 15% comes from southern Dallas. It affects everybody, renters and owners and everybody. And but the needs are so high and the demands are so great. It's
Well, Dallas also doubles down on that. They have high taxes and arguably not good services.
Right.
And the building permitting fees, we'll have clients that we have come in that haven't developed in Dallas, but they have in other major cities, and they can't believe how much more expensive it is in Dallas, and it takes much longer.
Yeah.
And if you're going to charge a lot, it ought to be really great service. Like Neiman's is expensive, but also really good.
Right.
It's not. Walmart is cheap, and maybe
you get what you pay for.
That's right. That's right. One thing that you brought up about that relates to this is that the city for I guess the last 3 years or so has been collecting these parkland fees on a per door basis for apartments. And they haven't spent any of it that I'm aware of. It's like the tree mitigation fund.
Right.
They have these pools of money, and I know when they, I think it's a great idea because I guess the old joke is that all the parks are where not all the people are in Dallas. And do you think the city's going to use this money and acquire parks?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. We acquired a parcel up in the Valley View Galleria
I knew that.
area,
That's true.
and we did use some of that parkland fee to do that. So I hope we'll do more of that. They're good, bad, or ugly. Sometimes those fees are a little tied up. Some of those fees may be related to needing a match, like a private sector match or a public entity match, so that we're
like
not
downtown with some of these parks.
Right. So, and that's been a challenge in the Valley View Galleria area. Is there's $6 million of bond money sitting out there, waiting for a match, and we can't get any of the developers to kick in a couple of shekels just to unlock this money.
Yeah, let's talk about Valley View. You and I both went to the mall, and it's one of those sites that people think, or this is my opinion, it on a piece of paper, and if you're from San Diego, it looks like a great site.
Right.
It's at 635 in Preston. It's in North Dallas.
Right.
But if you dig into it a lot, there's also a lot of crime in that area. There's a lot of aging multifamily. I know I bothered you on a Saturday when our car got broken into one time at Sportsplex, and now my kid says when we go to play there, Dad, we got to Sportsplex the car.
We just put everything in the trunk.
That's right.
Lock it all up.
Yes, and so that's the same area, and I think that is a challenge for the site, because when we've had people come in to talk about it, people from out of town look at that site a lot differently than people from in town.
Right.
People from in town, I think some of them think it's more like Vickery Meadows than it is like North Park.
Right.
So, talk about some of the challenges and what do you think is going to happen? Because I know when you started your council career, you really thought something would have happened.
Yeah,
by now.
when I started my council career, Linda had just passed the zoning. The PD had just been passed, possibly like even in April or May.
Yes.
Right before I started.
Yeah, it was right before.
Right. The city granted a huge amount of entitlements to every single property owner there. People that had rights to have a 2-story multifamily now all of a sudden have rights to a 12-story multifamily. People that had rights to like regional retail parking lots now had rights to 40-story towers along LBJ. The entitlements that were granted were immense, and the problem amongst many is that what we most had over there were property owners, not developers. There weren't people there that they wanted to participate, but they didn't have either the vision or the wherewithal or the patience
to
make it happen. And so that's been really challenging. Some of the things that are going to drive that development that are important is a big 20-acre park in the middle of it. That is still in the plan, and like I mentioned, we just acquired the first parcel of that right there in June, right before I left. And we've got to get some of the owners there to get with developers and really develop the site. Now, it's much bigger than just Valley View.
Sure,
a lot of people don't realize Valley View itself is about 100 acres. The whole district is 460 acres that have tons of entitlements in there. There's a lot of what some people call market rate affordable housing.
I mean, that doesn't have. One of the things that's great about Uptown and Oak Lawn is the market has chewed through all of those, and you can't find those bad apartments that create a lot of calls for service from the police department, etc. The best way to make multifamily go away is to have new multifamily go away that has structured parking, and those are 50 to 100 year buildings, and they do well every time. Right,
and so what you have there is a number of what I would call just income owners. As long as that rent check comes in every month, they really don't care what happens. So we've got to get those units turned over to someone that wants to redevelop them. And we're trying. I mean, there's so much you can do as a council.
I know.
But I do think that that's an important factor in there. What people, I don't think they fail to realize, but they're not taking advantage of, is the entitlements that are there. And so you could take a 2-story garden apartment style and put up a 5-story garage wrap there and double the number of units easily. And what's interesting is I'm a pretty big fan of affordable housing, and you could increase the affordability because you'd have more than double the amount of units. You could keep some affordable.
Now, some of the problem is too, and you see this in the Cedars for years, that speculation prices continue to go up and up and up, and nobody wants to sell to get out of the property because they think they're selling too early.
Right.
And I think some of that's happened there, that there are such entitlements for 10 stories. Right now, I think too, none of the cool kids want to live out there.
Right.
And there are not as many restaurants. I mean, and you and I have had this conversation many times that, and maybe we kind of switch gears here a little bit. As a kid, North Dallas was the place, arguably, in the whole state.
Right.
And things have changed where, Uptown wasn't even a thing.
Right.
You did 8 years, and I like to joke about Dallas has an unusual form of government called 14-1. 14 mayors and one guy that runs the meetings.
I've used that frequently. Thank you.
You're welcome. No, you don't have to give me a footnote, but I appreciate it when you do. I mean, and I joke about this, but it's really serious from a zoning perspective. That's how it works.
Right.
And So do you know, and 14.1 has definitely worked in terms of being more inclusive. There are many things that are successful, but do you think that it is, do you think it's a good system?
It is an interesting form of governance. The nice thing about it is it's easy to count. All you need is 8, and that is helpful.
Well, I think another thing that has worked too is the voters know, and they've done a good job, but better lately too. People they're unhappy with over one thing or another, or just that they're not involved. They're not there for the full 8 years.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing is that somebody's not there. They can't do too much damage.
Right. And they can't because the voters will move them along. But the other thing is the council members, a lot of folks don't realize that it really is a full-time job if you want to do it right.
Absolutely. And you really need to have served on the park board, the plan commission, some of the boards. I think it's important.
That'll cost you a year or two. If you didn't serve on anything like that, then you're a year or two behind.
Right.
Now, smart people catch up.
Sure.
They figure it out.
Yeah.
But I mean, even after being on the park board for 5 years and interacting with so many other departments, there was so much I had to learn the day I got there. There was stuff I was learning the day I left.
Right.
It was unbelievable. I'm like, really? We do that this way? I've been here 8 years. I didn't even know.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing that's interesting, this is the first time in my career of working on zoning cases that you have as many people on the council that came from the Plan Commission, because you've got, Janie and Paul Ridley and Chad West, all were on the commission, Ridley and Janie a long time. Really know the technical details. Right. Chad was there less long, but is very knowledgeable. Do you think that's a good trend?
I think it is. Certainly to have people from one of those big groups like that, either planning commission is important because you are trying to plan the city. Other big budget departments, parks, cultural affairs, libraries, that's important too because you're dealing with big budget numbers. But the interesting thing about coming off the planning commission that some council members don't realize, that I think planning commissioners may or should realize, is there are very few places the council can actually enhance the value, can make people money. But 8 votes can make somebody money today, a developer. They can take a piece of property.
And that's why people do projects. They won't, and this is, we talked a little bit about the suburbs. We're doing far more jobs in the suburbs than we are in the city of Dallas. And some of your colleagues are like, well, I haven't seen you lately. Are y'all not busy? No, we're as busy as we've ever been.
Right.
But the market talks, and our developer clients take on a lot of risk. So there has to be a lot of reward to make that risk worthwhile. Right. And so I'm glad you see that.
It is. We do so many things at the council, pass so many ordinances, so many resolutions, do so many budget things, but the one place where we actually make money for people is in zoning. And with that being said, I know I wasn't exactly friendly to the developers community when I would make comments like the city of Dallas should share in that value because we're creating value. When we took it from X to Y, that increased value of that property. And in my view, at least when I was on council, was the citizens at large should share in that. And that would mean some kind of public policy issue, whether it's affordability, whether it's more sidewalks, whether it's canopy. Somehow the citizens should get back because it's costing, the value comes from the citizens.
Yeah, our clients, of course, are going to tell you, well, we're paying more in taxes.
No, you can't tell them to pound sand, but...
Well, that's right. That's true. But, and that's another area.
But there is a balance there, okay?
There is. I mean,
because we got to get people here to do development. And,
that's right.
And developers, they
have to make money.
Nice as they are, right, exactly. It's not a charity. Development is not a charity. So the question is, what can they give back to the city, or to the council, or to the neighborhoods that make that neighborhood feel comfortable with giving up that value? And a lot of times it doesn't have to be a lot.
And for the neighborhoods, it's about giving up that change.
Right.
And I joke a lot of times that what I really see myself is professionally is I'm an agent of change. people don't do well with change. Particularly as they get older, they like things to be the way that they know them to be, and they don't want to take on a lot of risk in their neighborhood.
Right. You know, it's funny you talk about an agent of change, because when I was on the council, I used to talk to neighborhoods a lot about zoning, and what I would try to explain to them is I would say, for whatever reason, your property and this subject property are in some kind of equilibrium. Just historical, they're just there. You may or may not like the use, but they're in some kind of equilibrium. The developer or the owner wants to change the rights, okay, relative to you. So what you've got to look for is how can you be compensated or bring it back in equilibrium, which may be an enhancement of your rights too, or maybe some offset. And I used to tell people, I said, don't focus on it's going to be more traffic, or it's going to be these kind of people, or it's going to be da-da. Focus on how do I get back to equilibrium.
Right. We're going to have an open space. There's going to be something that, and Preston Village is a good example of this. I think is that there was a lot. I mean, everybody agreed that it was run down. That's a good group of neighbors. You know, now they fought hard. But those are nice people. They're good people,
and they're well intended.
I mean, it's the only zoning case I've worked on. I worked on it when my oldest kid.
You started that when you were in college, right?
I did, basically, but it's crazy because I tell Leon Backus now, we got to string it along a little further because my first child was not born yet when we were working on the zoning case, and now she's in high school. We got to get this to college.
Right.
But those are also neighbors that sent baby gifts, and they're nice. Good people, and they did understand something needed to happen there.
Right.
They just wanted to have a hand in shaping it, and it worked out great because the multifamily's nice. Mm-hmm. That's what they wanted. They wanted nice multifamily, and the retail's good, and I'm hopeful that we'll get an office building built there on the corner at some point. Yeah. And you know, we have a patient developer that's going to continue to own it, and didn't go in and just try to just get whatever I can and sell the deal to some institutional investor. So I think that's really an ongoing success story. The city has changed so dramatically, you know, in almost any area. I mean, like food. You know, this is really a good food city. Mm-hmm. And you know, the La Barba Company, we get such a good opportunity to work with all these new restaurants, and
that's cool.
And it's great that I think that's a strength that we have against the suburbs.
Because what else is there to do?
That's right. Well, that's true. There's shopping and there's eating, and we're good at that here.
And cycling and walking on the trails.
That's right.
Added trails into that mix.
Let's talk a little bit. You brought it up about affordable housing. You know, and I will give you credit. I'm glad the council's talking about fee and lieu. You talked about that at the very beginning because you understood that not every apartment developer does affordable, and there's a lot of paperwork, and but there are people who do that kind, and that's their specialty. So, one, do you think that the council will come up with something that's workable, and two, you know, we've seen the numbers statistically at Masterplan. People are doing fewer projects in Dallas because of affordable housing. So, do you think where do you think those issues are going to end up?
So it's obviously it's always in motion, and I'm hoping the council will come up with something that developers can get comfortable with. You know, I wrote an affordable housing voucher. Not voucher, it was a certificate program.
Yeah.
Back in my first or second year. Yeah. I got more kudos and more stuff about how great this is and and zero traction.
Right.
Everybody showed you thought it was a great idea, but nobody wanted to help me do it. And so we can talk all day long till we're blue in the face about affordable housing. We're never going to get it till we just bring the total housing up. It's supply and demand. There is currently a floor on the price of housing in Dallas because we are restricting the supply. It's simple economics 101. The line crosses here, but the level is up here. We need more total units. Honestly, they don't even have to be affordable units if we could just get enough units, and then the market
will work on that. I mean, you know, you've seen that in Uptown. Things that we worked on in the 80s are now reasonably affordable. There's still structured parking. They get a redo on the inside, but they don't command the $3 that something new does. And so you have seen that really work. that more is often the answer to this, not less.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
This was a good discussion on If You'll Permit Me. For more information on Master Plan, please find us at www.masterplantexas.com. Thanks.